Trailblazing, a creative approach to developing accessible guided tours. Fort Brockhurst in Gosport is a 19th century fort that is managed by English Heritage. This film documents a trailblazing guided tour that took place at the fort in 2012. The tour was designed to be as fully accessible to people as possible, regardless of any physical or sensory disabilities. The people involved with creating the tour share their ideas and experiences, and it's hoped that the film will provide you with inspiration and ideas for increasing accessibility with your own events and venues.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Fort Brockhurst Accessible Tour. I'll only be speaking briefly here because most of the information of the introduction is on our soundtrack, which we'll play to you, or in one of two booklets here. If anyone is hearing impaired and they want an explanation of any of the audio descriptions on our tour and also of the introduction, these booklets are here for you to take, so if we could distribute them. And also there's ones here for anyone who's visually impaired and wants a description of some of the textile pieces that we've got as are going around.
My name is Liz Porter, and I have been working with Creative Landscapes as a disability advisor. Creative Landscapes is one of the Accentuate projects in the South East. So I suppose my role really has been to help support Trailblazing, which is the name of this project. We have been working with Splodge, who we've commissioned to explore ways to show Heritage Open Day event organisers how they might make their events more accessible to deaf and disabled people.
My name's Claire Jefferson. I'm from Splodge Designs. We did a brief where we had to put forward ideas to make a heritage building more accessible for all sorts of different people with different abilities and disabilities. So we looked at making textile pieces that people could touch. We looked at integrating scent into those textile pieces by using authentic uniform. We also looked at having a soundtrack so that people who maybe who had sight impairment, they would be able to hear what was going on in the picture and also touch the pictures.
They were then able to go to the pay office where they handed over their pay book, and the amount of pay that was owing to them was sorted out and given to them, also with a railway ticket to their home. The reason why the soldiers are carrying some canary cages is that the canaries were used in the trenches during the First World War to detect gas.
There are many aspects of inaccessibility, ones that obviously employers and venues are now aware of, such as things like providing ramps and lifts and induction systems, but we've had to look at it from a creative aspect, and we thought if people want to interact with the forts and learn about the history, what can we do? So that's why we decided to make these textile pieces very visual and colourful, and also having the soundtrack as well to give a verbal history of the particular room that you're in and how it is used over the eras, and so it kind of ties together as a kind of multimedia project in which visitors can experience through one or more of their senses.
You know, normally you tend to go into galleries and you take a step back and people don't touch things, and we're really quite keen for people to feel the actual textures and to be involved in our pieces.
Fold up their laundry where they have to fold their bed up at night. Absolutely.
Over the last 2 years, we've developed very good working relationships with a whole range of venues and also a whole range of disabled people, local disabled people.
I'm Terry Rhodes. I've been working specifically with Creative Landscape through an inclusion group that we have, which is made up of a small group of people from all forms of with all forms of disability who look at the access and inclusion issues that may come up around visiting a heritage event.
When we first took on the brief, the first thing that we did was consultation. So we came along to the sort of inclusion groups. We also tried to make contact with any other groups and went to their meetings as well. And we asked lots and lots of questions. What would make this better for you? We talked to people who were hearing impaired and what could help enhance their tour. And what we learned from that was that even though we were trying to cover as many of the bases as possible and they weren't going to be able to hear the soundtrack, they'd still like to know what was on the soundtrack. So we then made our booklets, which then described all the aspects of what was on that soundtrack.
It's through those kind of groups that we've been able to forge links with local community transport providers such as the Jolly Bus.
We've run the accessible bus today. We did that last year for Heritage Open Days as well, and some of the passengers have from then have actually joined us today as well. And one of the things they say is they just would not be able to get to anything like this if we weren't supplying accessible transport for them. But access is about a lot more. It may be simple things. It may be actually making sure that the information you produce is also available in a large print so that somebody whose eyesight isn't as good can actually read it properly.
Putting your information into bigger fonts and using photographs imaginatively can be another way. So you might have a handheld document which has photographs and text that could describe that photograph.
And soundtracks, again, another place you can get a CD with original music. It all enhances people's experiences.
I would say think about the senses. Are there other things that you can incorporate? We've used things like carbolic soap here today, but maybe some of the houses have smells of flowers. Perhaps they have sounds of lots of birds in the garden because there was a dovecot there or something.
The site is difficult because it has steps in practically every single room, so we've hired out ramps and moved ramps around so that we've actually able to get into each room. Part of the reason why we had the big yellow signs were people were saying that a very sort of simple symbol which told you where things were would just make things so much easier for people with some sort of sight impairment, but actually not only sight impairment, for anybody.
A lot of people may not realise that the simplest things, like just putting a few freestanding chairs dotted here and there about a place, this is quite a big site, but for some people it's a long way to walk around or to get around. So having a chair to sit down and rest can make a lot of difference.
Feedback from visitors on the tour. William Phillips.
I'm very impressed they seem to have dealt with all issues as regards smell, touch, texture, and having the sound effects and the reminiscence. I think it's extremely good.
Lee Bayliss.
Yes, it was good. It was good. It was very visual. We were able to stand in an area where we could touch things, and it needs perhaps a brief signage to be able to read, just very brief points, just in case you've missed anything that the interpreter's tried to say or someone's distracted you.
If you can do it, ask your local groups, blind groups, deaf groups if you can get them involved, elderly people using wheelchairs, and get them involved. Actually ask them what you think they can do, and then sort of work with them. So whatever you do, try and get it tested by somebody or get their opinion on it.
Well, I am a local boy, and I've always passed Fort Brockhurst and never been in before. So it was quite an impact. It seemed interesting, and I walked around with the interpreter and I found it was very, very useful, and I felt the atmosphere here. It was very interesting to understand what went on here in the past. And I never thought of this going on in the locality, and it's been very, very good.
Improve accessibility. Be prepared, plan ahead and consider access issues in advance. Be informed. Find out what people's needs are. Be creative. Think of all the senses. Be resourceful. Simple things can make a real difference. Creative Landscapes would like to thank all the staff at Fort Brockhurst and the volunteers of the Gosport Heritage Access Group and the Heritage Open Days Committee for their help with this project.